Hi there, I'm Dr. Anastasia and this is Sage Health TV. Today I want to talk to you about a topic that is on a lot of people's minds these days. It is a topic that is often brought up in visits with patients who are concerned about memory loss and or patients who have a loved one who has been struggling with memory loss and or dementia or Alzheimer's. So I know that can be a heavy topic, and I know it's something that a lot of people are struggling with these days. We hear more and more about it, but I'm here with more of a hopeful message. I want to talk to you about 5 modifiable risk factors, things that we can look at and things that we can change or prevent, especially if they're caught early. And so I'm just going to go through a quick list of what those things are, and then talk about how you can get access to look at those things for yourself. The first one is something called Hemoglobin A1c, and I'm sure a lot of people have heard of that. That is what is considered a marker for prediabetes or diabetes. And as many of you may have heard, Alzheimer's disease is often called type 3 diabetes. And that is because there ends up being a lot of glucose dysregulation in the brain. And so taking a look at hemoglobin A1c, which is once again that long-term marker of blood sugar regulation, is something a lot of doctors are already doing, but they're sometimes not doing it until people are a little bit older or if there's a higher family risk factor or risk of diabetes. So just to give you a sense, the cutoff number that's kind of traditionally used is a 5.7. Anything over that is considered sort of, pre-diabetes, or just start to keep your eye on it. And amazingly, a number of just 6.5, which is just less than 1% over what's considered that marker to start watching, is considered with a 2.5 times increased risk of dementia, and that a number of 7 or greater is increased risk of 4.5 to 5 times the amount of dementia. So we are looking at a risk factor that is easily measured, and through lifestyle changes, diet, nutrition, exercise can actually be lowered. The next one I want to talk to you about is something called MTHFR. That is actually a gene that Dr. Angela and I talk about a lot. We've mentioned it in so many of our shows. And MTHFR, once again, it's a genetic variant. The one we're talking about here is the C677 variant. And that has a direct impact on how our body metabolizes folate and B12, and that plays into so many things, right? We've talked about it regarding fatigue, we've talked about it regarding pain, energy, all of it, but it's also a direct marker, or not a direct marker, but a direct factor that can impact how our brain functions. So that leads us to the next one, which is called plasma homocysteine. I did a whole video on this last summer, and once again, it's a super important biomarker of vascular inflammation. And we know that our brain is full of microvasculature. People with the MTHFR, which I just mentioned, actually have an increased risk of high homocysteine, and that is basically an indirect marker of how our body is utilizing B vitamins. They've done a lot of studies around this as an independent risk factor for Alzheimer's and dementia, and what they found is that even a moderate elevation in that number, and I'm talking 11 or greater, even though the cutoff reference range in conventional lab testing says 11, greatly increases the risk of cognitive decline, and that can be easily treated with the right type of B vitamins in the right doses. The fourth one is something called fibrinogen, and fibrinogen is something that we look at really, really regularly here at Sage Integrative, because once again, it plays into so many things. It is basically a clotting factor. It's one of 12 blood clotting factors, and fibrinogen is converted to something called fibrin, which is an insoluble fiber in the blood that can lead to increased risk of stroke, increased risk of other cardiovascular events, and increased inflammation throughout the body, including the cardiovascular system. Once again, it's something that is easily measured and something that we can work with to bring that number down through things like fish oil and proteolytic enzymes and such. And then finally, that brings us to something called hemoglobin. And hemoglobin's a really commonly looked at thing. If you've ever gone to the doctor and gotten blood work, you've probably gotten a CBC. And that CBC looks at our hemoglobin. It's a marker of anemia. And just in the past month, these studies have come out that have shown that people with really low hemoglobin which is a marker of anemia, or really high hemoglobin, like way, kind of outside of that healthy reference range, are way more likely to deal with dementia later. And that is because low hemoglobin, or low, which is a protein that carries oxygen throughout the body, including the brain, decreases oxygenation to the brain. And high hemoglobin actually causes more viscous blood, which once again decreases the amount of blood that can get to the microvasculature. Because dementia is such a huge and growing concern, and because all of these tests are so easily accessible, and the results are things that we can work with to change and correct and prevent, I recommend that people get these tests done, and they get them done early. There's a lot of other factors that play into this, but this is a really, really good start. So talk to your doctor about having them done. My hope for you is that you'll be proactive and take action on this so that you can have a life full of clear and beautiful memories. Thanks, we'll see you soon.